Welcome to the Coaching Show. I'm Laurie Lawson, and tonight my guest is Pete Cafarchio. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did, Laurie.
All right, Cafarchio. And I happened to meet Pete at an ICF gathering and found out that he is the creator of something called Dynamic Destiny. And I'm going, oh my gosh, I got to find out what the heck Dynamic Destiny is. So Pete, welcome to the coaching game. Actually, I called it the Coaching Show.
Thank you so much, Laurie, for having me here. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So tell me, I want to know all about Dynamic Destiny, but also tell me, we were talking, and I said, nobody's really born a coach. How did you get into coaching? I'm always fascinated to hear how that happens.
Yeah, so actually, my background is I did 8 years in nonprofit. I have an engineering degree, and I did 22 years in high-tech startups, software and the area of cybersecurity, so hackers and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly not so much a programmer, I was more on the business side. But along the way, just in my regular life and even in work, I just always gravitated toward what is this person wired for? You know, what's their kind of the skill set? They're not more than just the skill set, the talent set that's on there, and you know, I would just encourage people that way. And I was doing some mentoring, and you know, finally somebody said, you know, Pete, people get paid for what you're doing because it would really impact them in a powerful way, and they'd be encouraged, and they'd have more clarity on what they should focus on. I was like, well, really, what is that? And then I found out about coaching. And you know, I kind of took to it. I did it part-time for 3 years, and then I went full-time.
Just going to ask, did you give up all those careers?
No,
and
I phased into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I find, I don't know, for me and for people that I know, that's the most successful way. It's just, I mean, we all want to be a coach and coach in our pajamas, and that's it, and make millions of dollars. But I find if you phase it in, first of all, you enhance whatever you're doing immediately, and then you know, till it feels like it's right, and it obviously felt like it was right for you.
Yeah. And, you know, you still navigate and find your fit, and not just people tend to think only in terms of like, what do I have to say, but it's also finding your audience, you know, your people that really resonate with what you're saying, and then that you can really help. So,
yeah. I know in coaching schools and institutions, it's like find your niche, and those are the people. And I do a lot of mentoring now, and it's like, don't worry about your niche. The people are going to come to you, and then you're going to go, wow, that feels so cool. I should have been doing this all along.
When I finally said, I was doing the same thing. I was like racking my brain trying to find my niche, because I'm like a lot of coaches, I have so many different areas of interest, and I love to actually morph and adapt to somebody else's style, because that allows me to coach them better. So, you know, I'm not this real, but it has, my niche is finding me more and more. Yeah.
So what is that?
So I would say it's the area of destiny. Now that plays itself out in a few different ways, but to help people get clarity on their destiny. You know, what are they called to? Where can they best succeed? Now, one real practical outworking of that is their career. And so I do help people with career transition or to get better refinement on that. But some people, it's just, they just want to know, you know, what's my life purpose? It's a real common question, especially, I'm excited about this. Millennials really want to know that. They want to know, how can I make a difference in the world? Great, let's talk about that.
And you want to go, just shut up and get a job right now and relax. But no, they're ready to go. It's like, it took me forever to feel, oh, I could be doing something useful. Okay, that's good. So let me ask you a crazy question. Does everybody have a destiny?
I believe they do, but this is the place I take it. Did you ever hear the term, what's your lot in life?
No.
You know, like, oh, was my lot in life, or...
oh, I thought you said Latin life.
No,
what's your lot
in life?
Okay.
Yeah, we've heard that expression. So I'd like to think of that, but I like to think of like a lot like land, you know, my lot in the city or whatever.
Right.
Okay, so everyone has a lot, and they're not all the same. Let's face it, some people are born into more privileged circles. Some people have a really powerful natural talent set, okay? But how you cultivate that lot is up to you. Okay, so some of these things were predetermined, but a lot of it is up to you as well. So how are you going to maximize that? How are you going to invest in the talents you already have? How are you going to keep building on what you have in order to make the biggest difference? Okay, so part of it's assigned, and I think part of it's up to you.
And do you help them unearth those talents? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Exactly, yeah.
That's I have such a joy in that. Partly because I think I have kind of a natural gift for that. I always have. I could read people really quickly, and it was usually in a real positive way. Like, oh, you could be doing this. You could be doing this. But
he's a bossy guy. Yeah.
well, but what I learned, as I matured, to not be so bossy.
Right.
What I learned was, and especially through the skill set and coaching, which is so powerful, is not to deliver that to someone or advise them, but to draw them into it so they can come to their own conclusions.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, what a powerful, it's slower, okay, but it's way more powerful as far as stickiness. It's life altering, it's transforming, and then they can run with that, and that's something they're going to have for the rest of their life.
Exactly. It's empowering and for the person you're working with, whereas you can go, I think you'd make a great artiste, but they'll go, and then you're going to have the self-doubts and maybe the inaction or analysis by paralysis, whatever.
Well, then if you're a professional, like we are, we're professional coaches, they could have every right to turn around and say, you said I should do this. Right?
Yes.
And I don't want that responsibility.
No.
I really don't. And
No,
I raise kids, and they're fully functioning adults now, and they're doing really well.
Right.
But I had to learn even there. You have to let go. People have to make their own decisions. You can, give them principles, but they have to own it and make those decisions.
I'm wondering, what kind of clients come to you? Obviously, whenever we get a client, it's because something's not working right. It's like, oh, I need to change, I need to get more, I need to get less, whatever. Do they have that little nudgy feeling like, I'm not really on the right track?
So for me, I'd say probably 3 different areas. I already mentioned millennials, so young people that, blank slate, the world's my oyster.
Yeah.
How should I, what should I go after?
Yeah.
So we work with them. I have people that are in career transition, and that's being driven by, employment issues and, I need to make money, or I'm really, really unsatisfied or burning out. Well, it's a big cause of burnout. I mean, you can have poor managers or toxic environments, but a lot of times it's a misalignment. And you're being forced to produce in areas where you're not naturally gifted and wired. So we try to help them get a better alignment that way. And then the third area I would just say is, I call it coming up for air. And it's a lot of times midlife people. Something might trigger it. And it doesn't always have to be negative. It could be, oh, you know what, all of a sudden I'm empty nest now. Or just something. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, where is my life heading? And, there's got to be more satisfaction than what I have right now. Or, I love my life, but, I'm looking down the road. I want to make a bigger impact. I want to either affect more people, or I want to get better at what I'm doing and go deeper. Great, So that's the kind of the fuzzy middle area, but it could be any number of trigger issues. But the thing is there's people saying, I used the phrase before, find your fit and flourish. So I know I'm doing some things right, but I don't get to use the things that really make me come alive, or I'm stuck doing this a lot and it's really draining. I can do it, but do I really love doing it? No, and I really want to make the biggest impact.
It's so funny because it's hard to go against, or it's hard to take change and go against what society's telling you. I mean, I spent so many years climbing that corporate ladder, and when I got to the top, it's like, no, no, this is not what I want. But, and I'm not sure I would have known that if would I have spent the rest of my life climbing? Gosh, I hope not. But so it's kind of hard when people are there and they know something's wrong. So it's so nice that you're there to go, okay, let's figure out forget about what's wrong, what's right, what's going to make you feel right. I love that.
That was one of the aha moments for me in my development. I just hit a huge win in my business. It was a startup with some other folks, and closed a $5 million deal. It triggered the acquisition of our company. I mean, I was flying high.
You were going.
And the thrill of that, 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And then it's right back to, in fact, the CEO literally said to me, so what have you done for me lately?
Oh,
and
gosh.
I'm like, I just got your company acquired.
Really.
But right on the tail of that, I started asking myself the same question. It's like, okay, this is kind of empty. And I kind of didn't put a ton of faith in that to begin with. But what do I really want to do? And I knew right away what I wanted to do. I wanted to empower other people on my team to help them go win deals.
Wow.
I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to
Nice.
train them and mentor them, and that was actually technically I was started to coach back then. I didn't know what I was coaching because it was quite a while ago. But I said that's where I'm going to find my fulfillment, and I knew I would. And so ever since then, that's my joy. Yeah, I can get wins, and I'll continue to. But my real joy is helping you, go find your fit and go flourish where you're called.
So how did you find coaching? Because I have a theory that coaching calls who it wants. And how
Do
did
you really want to know very specifically?
I really do.
Okay.
I love this story.
So I was at a conference. It was like a church-based conference on business, the intersection of spirituality, faith, and business.
Wow.
A lot of networking. I love that. I love that
Yeah.
that topic, by the way. I love that area. So we're a lot of networking. I'm sitting down for lunch with someone, and I'm like, all my sensors are really, really high. Because I'm at a spiritual conference to begin with, my intuition's really high and relaxed and just enjoying it. And I'm talking to this lady, and she starts telling me, and I just, bam, bam, bam. I'm like reading her mail. I'm like, I bet you this, and this. And I said, your best chance for success is, view it this way instead of that way, and try this. And she's just, her jaw's hanging open, and she goes, you really should get paid for this.
Okay.
And that's why I asked her. So what is this in coaching? And a year later, I had already had my first client, and I got training and ramped up and started developing a brand and everything. But that moment right there is because I had naturally been doing that. I love to encourage people, but when I was like, oh, I could monetize this. And I don't mean that necessarily from a greedy point of view. It's just that I could make a living doing what I really, really love to do. It's like, whoa, yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I think as we were growing up, there was this parachute book, Do What You Love, and the money
I
will
still
come.
use that book. I use it with my clients. It's a great book, because it uncovers that.
Many versions now, I think of it. But
yeah,
and it's like, okay, if you can just find what you really love to do, then it's going to naturally progress. And reality is rent and mortgages and cars and all that have to be paid for.
So I find that dynamic right there that you just mentioned, what I would love to do, but what do I have to do? That is oftentimes one of the biggest barriers of people really entering into their destiny.
Really?
Because if you want to call, I'd say corporate America, but you could be in the government sector, whatever. I call it like the machine, right? And the machine has certain rules and expectations, and the machine is going to take as much as you're going to give it, right? To maximize profits and things. And by the way, the machine starts in pre-K.
Oh my
okay, because it does. It's training you to be a productive member in industrial society or corporate society. And so, we put people into slots, and when they don't have permission to ask themselves those kind of questions, like how am I wired, and what really does bring me joy, and how can I best serve? When they're not allowed to ask those kind of questions, they're kind of like inheriting these a schema that's very, very limited, and they try to fit in. I mean, good heart, good attitude. I want to do well, and I want to take care of my family, and I want to do a good job at work. But it can be crushing because it's like, nope, it's just very, very limited set. And so I have this love for helping people understand and identify their individual makeup and their nature. In fact, I have a process that I walk people through to really uncover that and get clarity.
Finger process?
I do. It's like, it's 5 fingers.
Can you tell us about it?
I can. Okay. So first, there are the 5 asks. Okay. So the first we say is ask your family and friends. Okay. So this is to get clarity on my purpose, because this goes to the area of blind spots. Now, we often talk about blind spots in a negative sense. Like, oh, you don't realize that you're coming across this way, and so it's a blind spot. But we can have that same dynamic plays with our positive areas too. You could be exceptionally talented at something, but you live with it every day, and you take it for granted.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
yeah.
you're like, oh, well, that's
That
no
is
big
a
deal.
blind spot.
That's no big deal.
Absolutely. I'm amazed at the people who can't write. I just take it for granted, but there are people who just limit their whole life because of that. So I understand what you're saying.
But if it comes easy for you.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to think it's a big talent.
Right, so you might not see it, but if you ask your family and friends, and I have a little exercise I walk my clients through, and they have to actually go ask family and friends, hey, what are the top 2 talents you see in me? What's an area I need to work on? And so they can get that kind of discovery. And especially, here's the real power, is when you see repeats, right? From multiple people telling you, you know, you have a great sense of humor. You always lighten things up. Or, I can't believe how much you always get done. You're super productive. Okay, so that's one ask. Okay?
Wow.
The second ask is, I say, ask your history. And that is looking back to see where have you had success, and not just in you know, employment eyes, but where did you feel successful? Like you accomplished something energized you, you felt like you were in your zone, you accomplished something.
Yeah.
And we actually have them write out stories. I borrowed this from Parachute, by the way. They write out stories, and same thing, we're looking for patterns. Oh, you know what? Every time you're successful, my big aha back in my 30s, I start things up. And that's where I got the most joy and had a lot of success is when I was starting things. Thus, I was in high-tech startups for 22 years afterwards. But there was this pattern. I was like, oh, wow, that's giving me another clue. I'm wired for that. Okay. Next clue I say is I ask science. And I really like assessments, personality assessments, skills and talents. I'm certified in the Gallup-Clifton Strengths assessment, because that really just points out all these different areas of talent that you can go maximize in. But you know, there's Myers-Briggs and DISC and lots of other ones.
Enneagrams, all kinds of stuff.
But so many people have taken. There's these huge databases now, and we're getting lots of data mining out of that. It's super. It can be really helpful, and people love Enneagrams, especially younger people. They're just all over it. So the fourth I say is ask a professional. Like a coach.
You? I was going to say.
Ask a professional, because we're trained in this.
Yes.
And here's the thing, like some people say, well, I don't want to pay a coach. You know, that's fine. You don't have to. The one thing a good trained coach can do, they can speed this up much faster.
Exactly.
I mean, I've had results with people I don't want to promise this, but sometimes even in 2 sessions. It's like they're already getting their big, huge ahas, and they're off to the races.
Yeah.
Whereas that could have taken them a couple of years if it was just trial and error.
Exactly. And you kind of cut through the bull, you know? It's like, oh, okay, you know what that is. Yeah, so, yeah.
And then the fifth clue I say is ask God. Now, that could be, you know, whatever your religious persuasion is, and even if you're not.
The universe,
whatever. Whatever. But, you know, at least a and more than that, even I think Islamic and others, if you believe there is a pattern and a purpose to creation and for you being on earth, what is that? Well, if it's a benevolent God who placed you here, if he's benevolent, he's also interested in you finding that out. Okay, and
so he will help out.
Exactly. So ask.
He or she. Thank you.
That's right. That's right. Wherever you're at, but ask. And then pay attention to where those clues come from. And so, you know, depending on where their faith tradition is, we'll go deeper with that or whatever. But those are there's more things you could do, but those are the 5 that I say. And then when we pull those all together, and it's not a formula, it's a process. We pull those together, we pull the different clues together, and a picture starts to emerge. And now, oh my gosh, this explains so much why I love doing this, or why I feel so unfulfilled here, and things start to emerge. Like, you know what? Then they can go make decisions to maximize. I say the flourish. Find your fit first, and then flourish. Those things can instruct and inform you then where you want to be heading, where you can go crush it. And here's the thing: make the most impact, because you're going to make the most impact where you're naturally talented, okay, and what you enjoy doing the most. Okay, they all work together.
Do those 2 necessarily have to be the same thing, or can they be combinations of both?
So what I say is your wiring, okay, will typically, it's going to already express itself in successful moments in your life. That's why we do the history part of it, okay?
Right.
And then when you get a clearer understanding of your wiring, then when you can make decisions about where you're going to fit best. Now, does that mean exclude everything else? No, life has to go on.
Yes.
But even in that training that we do, when we go real deep with the Clifton Strengths, we also teach people, if you have to do things that you just don't like to do, how can you bring the best part of you and kind of morph it in?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
For example, I am really terrible at focus. Okay, I have a really hard time. I can focus on something for about 2 days, and
That's
but
pretty good.
well, yeah, on a project, and then it's like I get distracted because I'm real creative and I'm onto
Yeah.
other things and I have all these ideas. But I'm poor at focus, but I'm very strong in what's called futuristic or visionary. Okay, so and ideation, new ideas, things. What I found was if I write my vision for the future down, okay, just write it down, which I love to develop a clearer picture of the future. All I have to do is go back and revisit that like once a week or every few days.
Put you back on track.
Exactly. Okay, so I don't naturally have that focus thing,
gotcha.
but I take one of my other strengths and I make it work for me.
Wow.
Okay, so.
Well, let me ask you, the 5 ask. I really like the 5 fingers concept, but 5 ask. Is that a long process? Do you do that in the first session? Does it?
No,
depend?
it's a process. First of all, if you go to my website, shameless plug, but
At the bottom.
yeah, petecoaching.com. I have a lot of free resources that you can just take and run with them. The Ask Your Friends and Family, I have like a form. It's free.
Okay.
Go take it, go use it. The history part, I point people to Parachute. So it kind of depends on where they're at on their own self-awareness. But I have done this. I've actually done this in group settings as well.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, in a group, we can do this if we move things along once a week. If we have like a once a week meeting, probably like 7 or 8 weeks. You can you can touch all the areas and get clarity. It kind of also depends on the motivation of your client.
Motivation, awareness, all of that.
And how much time they have really to put into it.
Yeah.
And how much work have they done beforehand? Like, some people are really self-aware, and some they've never given themselves permission to ask.
My best time is when I ask somebody, well, what do you want? And you get that deer in the headlight, and it's like, I never thought about it before. What do I want? It's like, what does that mean? And you have to really orient them to that, and then they can move along and get the
That's
change.
exactly right. So that's when I said coming up for air.
Yes, exactly.
Like
Yeah.
surface out of the water, like, oh my gosh.
There's a lot of stuff out here.
Yeah. So that's.
So I'm sure you're going to find it on the website. You do workshops?
I have done online workshops, and I'll do those periodically.
Okay.
I've done career workshops. I've done in-person, I call it Decoding Your Destiny. And I also do public speaking as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see you're marvelous at that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
All right. I want to talk about dynamic destiny while we have some time.
Sure.
What is it, and how did it get started?
Okay, so Dynamic Destiny is a radio show and podcast. It's the same broadcast, but it gets played out in different ways, and YouTube. Right.
Right.
And we've been talking about working with our clients, but one of the things I just have a heart. I want everybody to discover this, whether I work with them or not. So I started blogging and saying, here's a point about getting clarity for your life purpose, and here's the things I've learned along the way. And by the way, side note, almost everything I share, I want to make sure I lived it also. I'm not just spouting academic theory, and you want to be authentic as a coach. Like, hey, I lived through this. I know what this is like.
Right.
So I just started blogging on things like that I've discovered along the way. And then people said, hey, Pete, you're so dynamic with your face, and why don't you try doing video blogging? So I started doing that. And then a radio network with Dr. Bacelli, is called Transformation Talk Radio, got a hold of my videos and said, hey, Pete, why don't you be a radio host? So, I spun that up just back in September. It's called Dynamic Destiny. It's my radio show.
It was not fledgling because it's
right.
Really
it was working up
right
to
out
that.
there. Yeah.
And so started doing that. That's every other week. It's radio and podcast and YouTube, and then I take the different segments from it and I put those out on social media, just to be a blessing, just to help people along the way. We call it self-coaching, right? Here's some tools. Go play this out. I can't always say it like really monetizes itself, but that really wasn't my heart. My heart was, this stuff is powerful. I want other people to know about it. And actually I have another little side reason, and that is when I coach my clients, I don't want to take. They're paying me. I mean, and good money because I'm not a cheap. I'm not a cheap coach.
It's not your discount bargain basement guy. Yeah.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time instructing them when they could do that on their own time. So that's part of the reason I was putting this material out, is so I could just point people to it. Like,
how thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, you know what? Go read this blog that I did, or there's a segment in my last. Show, or a month ago, and go listen to that segment, and then come back to me, and we'll talk about it after you have a chance to digest it. So it's just it's the efficiency. It's maybe my engineering my engineering background coming out there just to be more efficient. But
isn't it funny, because I know at one point, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I have such a diverse, like you, resume, and it's like this, I'm just going to accept this is never coming together. And suddenly one day it was like, God, this all makes sense. It's like I didn't know what I was doing, but it all, and I'm sure it was self-coaching, and in your case, if you were helping somebody get that all together, it would be coaching from you. And the minute I came out of coaching training, it was like, oh, this has to be shared. I can't be the only person feeling this good, So good for you. Now, on the website, they're going to find out how they can tune into all that?
Yeah, sure. It's right on my homepage, is how to sign up for a podcast, but there's a link in the menu, says media, and there's the radio, and I really like working with Transformation Talk Radio. They actually give me a website widget, so right on my website you can listen to any of my previous episodes.
I know,
just click. It's nice.
It's
all internet based. It's radio, but it's internet radio. It does broadcast on AM, but it's
it does.
But it's also on demand on the internet. It's amazing what's.
And I'm always, because I have a radio show too, not to the extent that you do, and it's just once a month, and we just play again. But I'm always amazed at how many people listen to podcasts, and it's like some people,
I listen to them all the time. For different reasons, but coaching, actually, that's another reason, by the way, I should have said how I really formalized my coaching. I was listening to a coaching podcast. It was 4 coaches by an organization called Professional Christian Coaching Today. I listened to that for a full year before I jumped in and said, you know what? I'm going to invest in my education, and I'm going to go to get my ACC, my credentials from ICF. And I'm really glad I did, because I found a tribe, if you will, of people, and that I can understand really high quality education and fairly high standards. So it was, it was a good move, but it was an investment, But I had to think about it for a little while.
I suspect that there are people out there right now listening to you and thinking, he's really cool. I want to be like him. We are out of time. Do you believe that? And I know. Wow. It just zipped by. Yeah. I can only think, I'm so glad we got together at the ICF get together, and so glad that you came and to be a guest on the coaching game. And please check out that website. You're gonna find them all over the place. And thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, I'd love to. Maybe we'll bring another guest.
Okay, cool. Yeah.